Hello, Alistair. Thank you for joining us today. I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask you about the Leeds Bradford Airport expansion. Firstly, why is the proposed expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport a national issue?
In December of last year, the government's own Advisory Committee on Climate Change recommended that there only be a 25% expansion in passenger numbers between now and 2050, when the government has set its target for net zero. However, many airports in the United Kingdom are currently or already have set much higher numbers for these expansion in passenger numbers. It's just impossible if all these airports get their plans targets for increased numbers of passengers met, then it is impossible for the government to reach its target of net zero for emissions from aviation. They're already growing at 8% a year, and they cannot grow any faster than 25% in total over the next 30 years.
Thank you very much. Why is the expansion problematic for the local population?
Well, there are two principal reasons for that. The first is that if you live under the flight path of Leeds Bradford Airport, and there are two, one going north and one going south, then you are exposed to a number of things. There's a noise aspect, there's the effect on air quality of the increased number of planes flying overhead, and there is also the transport, what's called surface access to and from the airport.
Thank you. Why is it that the expansion doesn't stack up economically?
Well, one reason is, and the principal reason is, that the airport in its assessments of the economic benefits has omitted from its calculations one very important fact, and that is that the much higher percentage of people who travel in planes to and from Leeds Bradford Airport are actually local residents of Yorkshire. Only a relatively small percentage of people are people coming from abroad to spend time or do business trips to Yorkshire and thereby spending money there. So in fact, what is happening is that people of Yorkshire are exporting their money, their resources to the destination airports and countries. And that money is a significant, a major loss to the Yorkshire economy. And this is just not allowed for in the airport's own calculations of benefits. There are other things that affect it, is that automation is one of the things by which airports reduce their costs. That's increasing rapidly in airports. And the number of jobs which the airport has predicted, which is 12,000 growth, is in fact based on the total activities, including present activities at the airport. So they are vastly overstating the jobs benefits and economic benefits from the airport expansion.
Tell us a little bit more about the health impacts of noise pollution. I know you're a GP by trade, so you obviously have a bit of knowledge on that side of things. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
I can. I was also a public health doctor, and I did my own dissertation many years ago on the effect of emissions from coal-fired power stations. So I do know what I'm talking about. And one thing I would say straight away is that the effects on health and public health, individual and public health, have really been downplayed in all the assessments which have been conducted of the effects of aviation expansion, particularly when the planes fly directly over heavily populated areas such as Leeds. The effects are, the principal effects would be from noise, and many people would be surprised to hear that aircraft noise is actually has a far bigger effect on people's health and well-being than they would normally realize. It affects things from a wider range as an increase in the percentage of people who have heart attacks when exposed to sudden loud noise from aircrafts. It's estimated in a recent study that might be as high as 3 in every 100 deaths in these areas are due to an effect of airport noise. It extends to things like there is a link between aviation and people having problems with their eyesight in later years over and above what they would normally expect. There has been an effect demonstrated on the increased number of birth weight babies. There had been an increase in the effect of number of children suffering from respiratory diseases, high blood pressure. The list is surprisingly long, and the more recent study has shown that even 5 hours exposure to this very small particles which aviation flights when taking off emit they can be identified after 5 hours in healthy young adults who are exercising quite near to the airport. So this is a developing science, and every bit of research that is done adds to the worries of public health doctors about the effects of aviation.
Wow, that's really worrying, isn't it? So if people watching this video are concerned about what's happening, what is it that they can do to help with the GALBA campaign?
Well, the other thing that anybody who doesn't live under the flight path, and obviously many people who do, is not just the effect of the direct effects of aviation noise effects on air quality. It is the massive increase in greenhouse gases. And if I tell you that the increased number of flights from Leeds Bradford Airport, which has been improved so far by Leeds City Council, is equivalent over the course of the next 10 or 20 years to the whole output of greenhouse gases from the city of Leeds. It is just, everything else pales into comparison with the effect of increased greenhouse gases from anything between around 18,000 extra flights a year taking off from Leeds Bradford Airport. So that people who are concerned with this, and I think anybody who has children or grandchildren, but anybody I think who cares about the future of this planet, the biodiversity of our planet, really should be very, very concerned indeed with this. What can you do? Well, currently the group for Action Leeds Bradford Airport have a petition running on 38 Degrees, which is asking for the Secretary of State who is in charge of this particular aspect of planning to what's called call in the application, which has been approved by Leeds City Council. And that would mean that a full planning inquiry would have to be held, which would look at all aspects of how this has been plan has been constructed, how the decisions were made, and the consequences for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, not just in Leeds, but Yorkshire and beyond, of the greenhouse gas emissions will affect them. So it's a big thing. So writing to your MP, writing to your local councillor, getting online, writing to the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, all these things can make a difference. So a little bit of action by a large number of people can have an effect, and politicians can hopefully be made to listen to the concerns of the people who are going to be directly affected by decisions.
It's brilliant. And I think you can also contact Alok Sharma, can't you? We'll put the links to email addresses and the petition and everything in all of the posts with this video.
That's absolutely right, yes. He's important in this because he is now the person in the government who is spending all his time on organising the government, as it were, and planning for the COP26 conference in Glasgow in November. This is a major conference of critical importance to the future of the planet. And Britain is leading this, but if it doesn't lead from the front and make it absolutely clear that it is committed to reaching net zero by 2050, and not just playing around the edges to the public for a bit of publicity, then we're in trouble. So he's an important individual, the Secretary of State, that's dealing with this.
Yeah, fantastic. And in one sentence, can you just sum up for us why the problems for the expansion outweigh the benefits?
I think the real main problem is the massive expansion of greenhouse gases, which will result from the major increase in the number of planes taking off from Leeds Bradford Airport. Everything else that we can do in this area pales into significance. We can walk, cycle, eat no meat, etc., etc., etc. But the one thing that will really make a difference to reducing greenhouse gas emissions in Leeds is to stop the expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport. And remember that 48% of people don't even fly. It's 10% of the population take almost half the flights from any airport. It's not about stopping people flying away for a holiday once a year. It's about stopping people flying more and more and more. It's the expansion of the airport, not the existence of the airport, that is critical.
I think that's a really important point, Alistair, and I think just to add, I think if this expansion was purely upgrading the terminal to this brilliant net zero environmental terminal that everyone's hearing about, if that's all they were doing and they weren't increasing flights, I think we'd probably be okay with it, wouldn't we?
Oh, absolutely, and a very important. Sorry.
No, go on. I was going to say very few people could have any problem with that. Having a nicer place to fly and having somewhere that's more environmentally friendly and that's generally a nicer place to be, fabulous. That's not the issue. It's the huge increase in the amount of flights they're wanting to take. What is the figure? Can you confirm? I heard it was something like from 3 million passengers to 7 million a year, something like that. Is that right?
Currently, about 4 million passengers a year fly from Leeds Bradford. They want to take that up to 7 million passengers a year. And let's be honest, the vast majority of these passengers are going to travel to Leeds Bradford Airport by car. That's how airports make their money. They make their money from car parking. They make the money from sales of drinks, beverages, duty. Well, there will no longer be duty free, of course. But that's where the money is made in airports. It's not made from receiving income from the airline operators. That's where the money is. And that's why. And where does the money go? Any profits made don't go to the people of Leeds. They go to the shareholders of the Australian very, very wealthy hedge fund company that owns Leeds Bradford Airport. So that's got no benefit for the population of Leeds either.
Absolutely. So before we finish, is there anything else that you wanted to say that you think we haven't captured? We've gone over did you mention the UK 10-point climate plan aviation targets? We talked about those, didn't we?
I did mention that. Part of that is about aviation, but again, it shows the worry we have about how the government's conducting things, because they don't mention in their 10-point plan very much about the need to manage demand. What they look at is things about the growth of what they call sustainable aviation fuel, or from planes flying with batteries. And the Climate Change Committee has been quite clear on this. This might reduce aviation emissions by perhaps 5%, or it would be remarkable if it approached even 10%. It's a complete myth that aviation can be made a nice carbon dioxide, greenhouse gas free. I think there's one other final thing that I would add too. I think the way in which this consultation about the airport expansion was conducted has been little short of disgraceful. It was advertised by Leeds Bradford Airport for the one public exhibition that took place as being about a new net zero terminal. Nothing was said about the modification to flight controls. And I must add that people who live under the flight path do not know that Leeds City Council has given approval to Leeds Bradford Airport to fly a huge extra number of planes between 11 o'clock at night and 7 o'clock in the morning. And that's called the shoulder period. That's the danger period for the health effects, particularly on people who've got heart problems and who get sleep disturbance, who've got mental health issues from much sleep. So it was a disgrace the way this was.
I remember you saying recently something about the health effects of being woken up in the middle of the night. Can you give us a little bit more information on that?
Well, in order to have a healthy daytime life, sleep is extremely important. And whilst there are some flights taking off at present between 11 a.m. and 6 a.m., they're very much a minority. This is going to change, and there will be one of the reasons for the desired pattern of changing the daytime flying hours, which basically means increasing the nighttime flying effectively. That's going to be the consequence of that, is that more and more flights are going to take off between 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning, and there will be more taking off perhaps even earlier than that. And because they hope to fly 3 flights a day to certain destinations, going there, coming back, going there, coming back, the third one will arrive back late at night. And these are the times when people's sleep is most disturbed. And unfortunately, most people living on the flight path do not know that this is what's going to happen. There's been great publicity given to the net zero new terminal, which everybody thinks is great, and it's fine. What they don't know about is the massive increase in flights, particularly at night time, early in the morning, late at night, and that's where the health effects are going to be most damaging.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much for that, and we'll make sure that we put GALBA's website, the petition link, Alok Sharma's correct address for COP26 stuff, and we'll put all of that into the posts. So we talked about, I've got 2 different questions here. Why doesn't it stack up economically, and why doesn't it stack up commercially? And I think you talked about both of those things at once. So I just wanted to make sure you're happy that you've covered the financial outflow, the contraction of the aviation sector, the Australian, obviously where the money's going to the Australian hedge fund. You talked about job automation, and you talked about, did we talk about the fact that airports are making a loss? We talked about the fact that the money doesn't come from flights, it comes from car parking and sales in the airport terminals, didn't we?
I mean, the one of the things, of course, is that it's Leeds Bradford Airport has not been heavily profitable, and the way it becomes profitable is by having an increase in the number of passengers parking at the airport, buying food and drink in their shops, buying the expansion of shops, they hope. And remember that these jobs which create this are very, very insecure. Most people don't realize that the basically COVID flew in and flew out, and economically, that if this happens again, what's been happening now, if there's a variant, for example, that appears from elsewhere, it will, because of asymptomatic transfer, it will be in here very, very quickly. I know it's a bit of a digression, but it might be worth reminding people that a country called Taiwan has 22 million people. It has a very large number of flights coming in from mainland China. It was one of the nearest places to Wuhan, which is the epicenter of this epidemic. And yet this country of 22 million had 10 deaths and 1,000 cases from COVID-19. Britain has had 126,000 at least deaths, and has had an economic disaster from this. Both have major international connectivity by air. The thing is that, in fact, that Taiwan closed its borders to air traffic very, very rapidly indeed. So it's sort of small print thing, but just think that when it happened, within a month or two, 150 people had lost their jobs at Leeds Bradford Airport. They're insecure jobs, they're poorly paid, 0-hour contracts. There's not a galaxy of high quality jobs there, and they can be lost very quickly indeed, unlike green jobs, getting people's homes more efficient, etc., etc., etc. So it's a small print issue, but actually it turned out to be a major print issue, because I think most people in this country are a lot happy with 10 deaths and 126,000.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that. I think we've covered everything, unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, I think we've covered many of the issues. It is very complex. There's a huge information and disinformation flying around. I think one thing that saddened me is that when you read the comments on various things about petitions supporting the airport, nobody mentions greenhouse gas emissions. Nobody mentions climate change. What they do mention is the opportunity to fly more from a nice net zero terminal.
Yeah.
They don't mention the things that other people are going to be living with, the noise from Leeds Bradford Airport, whatever noise mitigations are put in place for the rest of their in some cases. And our children and grandchildren are the ones that are going to have to see the increasing numbers of floods, fires, loss of growing of food, etc. So it's based, a lot of the desire for flying more is unfortunately selfishness. There are many very important reasons why people need to fly, but it's a certain greed implied, and it's my inalienable right to fly as often as I like, as far as I like.
Yeah.
One final point I would make, that if one takes a long haul flight to across the world, you're actually you use in that one flight, you're creating more carbon dioxide than what people living in 60 countries on our planet an individual loses in 1 year. And that's I think there's a bit of a pause for reflection. If we care, not just about our family, if we care about our friends, we should care about our neighbours. And really, as the planet gets smaller and smaller, and COVID's shown this, we should care about people living not just here, but a long way away, because they are the ones in poorer countries who will suffer most from climate change.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Alistair. That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.